Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today I'll be talking about albums that Afrobeats artists could make together to amaze fans and break the internet. The purpose of this video will be to suggest themes and soundscapes that these artists could use in a collaborative sense, while also suggesting potential features that these artists could use on the album to enhance this experience for fans. There is simply no better place to start than Asake and Fireboy as a collab album. Having these two on an album together would be a generational event, as these two artists have proven themselves to be the standout stars that have broken out in the genre in the last 3 or 4 years. The two being on the same label in YBNL means that the odds of something like this happening could be higher than other artists on this list. Furthermore, Fireboy's feature on the Kick Game show enhances the prospects of this, as the host Craig Mitch asks Fireboy if something like this is possible, to which Fireboy says that Asake had just come off the back of releasing his debut album, and therefore he needed time to release more music and enjoy his early career. Therefore, now that we have Asake's second album since this recording of the interview, it's possible perhaps that the two could work on an album together, given how Asake's profile has gone up massively in the last year or two. Given how well Bandana has been received as a song that the pair have together, I think it's clear that this album would take off and succeed incredibly well. The contrasting styles that the two artists have means that there would be no boredom or lack of excitement throughout the project. When thinking of what type of themes the artists could use for their collaborative album, I think it's clear that having themes relating to success would make a lot of sense, given how both artists have risen meteorically in the last few years. So having a braggadocious tone throughout the tracks could be very useful. When the artists want to come away from this theme on certain tracks, they could relate it to themes of brotherhood and closeness with the people that matter to you. When we see the Bandana music video, we see how close the duo are. And even in this Kick Game interview that I referenced, Fireboy references how close he is to Asake, how much of a brother he is to him. So I think combining the themes of success and brotherhood would make this album very insightful for the fans. I believe that having some sort of fusion of Amapiano and Afrobeats would be the ideal soundscape for this album. Given how this is Asake's primary sound, it would obviously suit him very well. Meanwhile, Fireboy in recent times has used this sound to a certain extent. In particular, his recent single Yawa incorporates elements of this production at times. Furthermore, he also featured on Shallipopi's Elon Musk remix, and this has a very Amapiano sounding beat to it. So therefore, if all beats on Fireboy and Asake's album had an Amapiano taste to it, I think it would go over very well. Feature-wise, this album should not have too many features on it. Given how Asake in the past has never particularly had many features on his albums, it would not make sense to overload the tracklist with new names. Therefore, it's important that we have names on this tracklist that would suit the vibe of the album, given in my opinion, it should have an Amapiano sound to it. Therefore, I would suggest having Shallipopi and Young John on these tracks in some way, shape or form, as these artists are used to Amapiano and Afrobeat infused production. Furthermore, Olamide has to be on this album, given how he's obviously the label mate of Fireboy and Asake. And furthermore, he's a talented artist who is able to operate on different types of instrumentals with his ability to vary his style. So to conclude, a collaborative album between Fireboy and Asake would break the internet, and I think it would go down a treat among fans and critics alike. Another Afrobeats album that would break the internet is a potential collab album between Burna Boy and J Hus. While J Hus is obviously not an Afrobeats artist himself, the collaborations that he has with Burna Boy means that he's able to fit this style very well. In fact, Burna and J Hus have 5 songs together, with highlights including Sekkle Down, Play Play and Masculine. When trying to visualize the soundscape of this album, it's clear that having a blend of Afrobeats and hip-hop would suit both artists well. This is the case as J Hus has rapped over an Afrobeat style instrumental before, with Who Told You being a prime example of this in recent times. Elsewhere, Burna Boy has performed over hip-hop instrumentals himself, with his recent album, I Told Them, having several influences from the hip-hop scene. So this would mean that both artists could come together and create an album that complements each other sonically, you know? When trying to imagine the possible themes that this album could bring, I think there's a duality that we could have with these themes. So firstly, when we look at songs like Play Play or Sekkle Down, we have a theme whereby Burna and Huss are rapping and singing about their relationships with women in a very confident and tongue-in-cheek manner. So therefore, you could have a theme of sort of success and being desired as something that they could lean on in several tracks on the album. But on the other hand, songs like Masculine or Cloak and Dagger have a very different mood to them, as both artists talk about struggle in one way or another on these songs. So therefore, having the duality of the come up and being desirable can be offset by the difficulty that has to be endured to get to this place. So overall, the artist could make this album one that has certain fans bopping their head while other fans understanding the emotion that is put into the music, you know? When discussing possible features for a collab album between Burna and J Hus, I feel like having very few features would be beneficial. So primarily I would suggest having Stormzy, Ira Star and Vic Tony on this type of an album so that Burna and J Hus have the biggest opportunity to express themselves. Overall though, I think it's clear that this album could have a lot of potential if it did come out. The way that their sounds complement each other and the chemistry that they have over their existing songs means that an album worth of songs would be absolutely massive for the scene. And overall, this album could be very impactful in the music industry if it did come out. Our final suggestion for this video will be a collaborative project between Wizkid and Benson. I think it's clear that given the two songs that they have together, Benson and Wizkid would make a good duo over the course of one project. In particular, Mood is a song that captivated many listeners when Wizkid released it as part of his Made in Lagos Deluxe album. And Many Ways is another song that enticed many listeners, with it being on Benson's Bad Since '97 EP. What's noticeable about Many Ways is the jazzy instrumental that is used throughout the course of the track, and therefore I think it's clear that a soundscape that mirrored this would be very useful. I believe that Benson's rather raspy and smoky vocal style would complement Wizkid's higher pitched tones well, and this would mean that the duo would have a lot of chemistry if they did make an album. When talking about possible themes that this album could bring, it's interesting how Wizkid and Benson are completely different places in their career. Wizkid is someone who has had a decade worth of content, while Benson has not yet released his debut album. So therefore, I think the perspectives that we could get throughout the album could be quite interesting, as both artists have seen different things in their career and have different career expectations going forward. So therefore, we could see a whole variety of themes in the album, essentially. While the other two projects that I'm suggesting on this video have had rather short feature lists, I believe Wizkid and his global appeal could make a possible collab album with him and Benson have a rather expanded and large feature list. For instance, artists with an American audience like Drake or Don Toliver have worked with Wizkid in the past, and it could be very refreshing to hear them work with him again. And you also have artists like Shay Vibes, Joe Boy, who've worked with Benson before, and it would be interesting to see them on an album with him and Wizkid. Given how Wizkid has worked with reggae and dancehall artists such as Damian Marley, Shenseea and Skillibeng, I think it's plausible that in his next project Wizkid pivots to a new genre for features as well. So therefore I would suggest that potentially Wizkid works with reggaeton artists on this album. So for instance, having an artist like Bad Bunny on a Wizkid album could break the internet and be very interesting for all who's listening to the album. So that would be a kind of wildcard shout as a feature on this album. And with those final feature suggestions out of the way, the video comes to its conclusion. I'm eager to hear what you think of these possible collab albums and what artists you would like to see collab in the future. Leave your opinions down in the comments, and make sure to like and subscribe. And until next time, I'll catch you later.